career as an artist change or evolve is a really big question as of late, right? I've been in the arts game for quite a while now, so I kind of think back and reflect about it. And as I'm asked to write bios or apply for things or even update my artistic resume, I'm really like, whoa, we're getting old. But also we've been really honored to do a lot of really cool things. And so when I started as a poet, I started as a slam poet. For those who don't know, that's competitive spoken word poetry. You can do it individually or as a team. And I really started as a slam poet, as a poet, in a very selfish way, right? I had stories that I needed to get out. I liked the reactions, the snaps, the oohs, the ahs, the tens from the judges, the accolades, the awards. I really loved all of that, right? But by stepping into that community, by stepping into the slam and spoken word community, I got to hear some really great poetry and meet some really amazing people who were, I have a friend, David Deliska, and I swear he speaks poetry. He breathes in poetry. His ren is an alliteration of itself, right? And so I really got to be part of these beautiful moments. And I think back to these beautiful poems I heard, and I really started believing in a very different way in the power of art, the power of spoken word, the power of words. And I was like, how do I do more? How do I do more of that? And I started learning about workshops and organizations and art facilitation and all that sort of stuff. And I really wanted to get into it, but I was working full time, right? Retail manager. And so I did it here and there, a few performances that weren't like actual poetry performances, like guest little set, feature set, some light facilitation here and there. And so when the pandemic happened and my store permanently shut down, I said, this is the year I'm going to be a poet's poet. I'm gonna art all year. And I did, y'all. I linked up with Vibe Arts for their Vibe Arts Next program for Black youth artists, and it was my first time exhibiting, my first time receiving professional mentorship and all that sort of stuff. And then I stepped into facilitation and grew these relationships with orgs like TDSB, and then I stepped into positions where I was challenging the art scenes. And so it's really evolved, right? I went from poet to facilitator to arts worker to arts challenger, and it's continuously evolving. And so, the poem's not done. There's always a next chapter, a next stanza. And I think as artists, we always evolve, right? As the world does. What supports would I like to see in place for artists? Dollar bills, y'all. That's a big part of it, right? The funding for artists to be able to do what they want. But I think there's a lot of really important questions. In a previous answer, I talked about Toronto's art funding as a city specifically, and how most of the funding goes to some really big arts organizations in which a lot of times the patrons could actually pay for the art form in itself, like the orchestra, the ballet. And so I think we, as the people, if we believe in art as change for people, we then need to change for the people, right? We need to think about who we're funding, where we're funding, why we're funding, and how we're funding. We need to think about barriers to access, barriers to reporting, tech needs, social and economic needs, food, etc., etc., etc. So I think, we do all these things, right? We think and we think and we think and we think. What do people need? If we're for the people, we go to the people, we ask the people. Toronto Arts Council did this Black Arts Grant, and they did a lot of really great groundwork on talking to Black artists to be, how would you think you'd want to apply for this grant? How would you think you'd want to do the grant reporting? How do you think you'd want to do this? And so what they did is they then offered grants to Black folks that had a lot of structure made by the community, by people who would be applying for the grants. And that's a really beautiful thing. So that's really the type of support and the change we need, right? We need systemic change, right? Because the barriers that a lot of artists like me, who are Black, femme, etc., and folks from similar backgrounds and similar barriers, we're facing, right? The challenges we are facing are systemic. So those are the supports that we need that challenge those sorts of systemic barriers. And I think we just need to listen, right? If we do active listening, we can learn a lot of things, and how we collect data and how we process data and how we utilize data to change the experience for our change makers, our artists out in the community and out in the city is really important, right? Because we can do all the focus groups, right? We can do all the fun lunches. We can give all the sandwiches or all, the TTC fares for coming down, for talking to us. But if we don't actually utilize that data, if we don't actually then have a purpose for the data that is for the people who spoke the words, what did we do? We gave people lunch. And that's a start, but that wasn't the purpose of the conversation, right? As a poet, as a spoken word poet, we always have to be grounded in the purpose of our word, the purpose of our action, and the purpose of our story. So I think that's really important in how we support our artists. So my hope for the future of arts is that arts is the future. Arts has been the future, past, present, and future, and it continues to be the future, but I hope that we invest in it like it is the future. I hope that we respect it like it is the future. I think, the last 2 years in the pandemic has been really hard, and I think it's cemented for a lot of folks, myself included, that arts and cultures is at the center of joy, the center of healing, the center of community, the center of happiness. And when we need it most, it's there. And I just hope that we invest in it. In Toronto, a lot of the arts funding, a huge majority of the funding goes to 3 to 4 major arts orgs, the orchestra and the ballet and a few others. And I hope that we diversify our portfolio, that we increase funding to in-need neighborhoods, in-need youth, in-need artists, and we really invest in our future, because the future's bright, y'all. I'm so honored to get to work with orgs that work with youth artists and still be in some spaces considered a youth artist, even though I am a 90s baby and such. And it's just so cool to see orgs like Vibe Arts, Jayu, Hamilton Youth Poets, and such really invest in the future, right? Invest in artists like me, artists who are younger than me, artists who have never exhibited, who have never facilitated, who have never produced merch, who have never hosted a show, and giving them those opportunities because they're the future, right? Why not get them the opportunities now, give them the networks now, right? So they can really start on the ground running and doing amazing things. Unity Charity is another great example. They just had an event that was all artist run. They did the marketing, they did the tickets, they did everything. It was all artist run. And so my hope for the future is that we really invest in it in all the right ways, right? I think the future is bright, so let's turn the lights on.